I'm gonna love you.
Hey, welcome back to Dan's Chess Lounge, everyone. Today in round 5, Nakamura was back on his tactical brilliance. He was back on his combinational masterpieces. He produced a stellar win today over the young Polish Grandmaster Jan-Krzysztof Duda. At one point in time, Duda was the second youngest Grandmaster in the world, and he achieved that at the age of 15. So he's a child prodigy. Both guys are child prodigies of chess. And it was a good battle. It was an exciting opening and an exciting game. Let's go ahead and dive into the game, and let's see what transpired. Duda was white. Hikaru was black. He played c5, the Sicilian. You know, I'm starting to notice a trend here. It's like whatever opening that Hikaru faces, he plays that opening the next day. You know, like he faced the Khan in round 2, then he played it in round 3. Then he faced the Sicilian yesterday, and now he's playing the Sicilian today himself. Knight f3, d6. d4, and then you have c takes d. We're going for the open Sicilian here. It's going to be an exciting game. Knight f6 hits the pawn on e4. So now white can play like a Maraxiban with c4. Now he's got to go ahead and protect the pawn by playing knight c3. You have g6. So this is the start of the Sicilian dragon. Bishop e3, and now you have bishop g7. Let me just go ahead and show you guys a little trap that's in this position right here. If black would play knight g4 here, attacking the bishop, it would be a mistake, because then white would play bishop b5, check. And then when black blocks the check, now the queen picks off the knight on g4, and it looks like the bishop could just go ahead and take the queen, but no, because the bishop is actually pinned to the king. So then black would just lose that knight for free. So that's a well-known trap in the Sicilian. So in the game, bishop g7 was played, f3, castles, queen d2. White wants to castle queenside and have his battery on the dark squares, and then he's going to launch his pawns on the G and H file and create some type of an attack on the king side. Black is going to use the semi-open C file and try to attack along that file, and it's going to be a race basically. Black's going to play on the queen side, white's going to play on the king side. Knight c6. Castles here. Sometimes, or commonly, bishop c4 is played here, and that's to stop d5, because d5 is considered black's equalizing move, like in these Sicilian dragon type of positions, and the positions like this where black plays d6. If he can go ahead and get d5 in early, black is considered have been equalized at that point. But in the game, castle was played, and Nakamura goes ahead and plays his d5 break move. He gets it in by move 10. That has to be a plus for black. Queen goes back to e1, and then Nakamura gets more space with e5 at this point, hitting the knight. Knight takes, pawn takes, pawn takes, and knight takes. I was looking at the engine, and it didn't really matter if Nakamura took with the pawn. It was all the same difference, really. Bishop c4, bishop e6, protecting. Now the king goes to b1. This is more like a prophylactic move. It's a good idea to get the king away from the action, and a lot of times you can get some tactics that come up with if the king is still on that on that diagonal here, and then if you have the dark square bishop and the queen able to hit that diagonal. Sometimes it can be some tactics involved there. So now you have rook b8 hitting the using the semi-open b file here. Knight e4, queen c7, getting the queen off of that file that the rook is facing. Bishop c5 hits the rook. Rook goes to d8. Now you have g4. White is starting his attack on the king side here. You're going to have white pushing his pawns. That's the plan. Push the pawns, try to crack through and break up black's king side over here and see what can happen. h6, h4. Now you have f5. And right here, I just want to stop for a second and say, I wrote a little note. Long gone are the days where black just sits idly by and lets white just jump all down his throat, and then black races on the queen side and tries to do the same thing. Nowadays, the players are so resourceful that they've looked at all these calculations and they've used the engines and they know what the best defenses are. So gone are the days where black would just sit back and let white do whatever he wants to do, and then it's like a clear race without any defense. Now there's a lot of defense in the dragon, and in most defenses now, there's a lot of protection and defenses, and the players all know this stuff now. Hikaru does a great job with this f5 move. G takes f, G takes f, knight g3. Now you have queen f7, adding more protection to his king side. Bishop b3. This move here is more of like a prophylactic move as well, because that rook, if we go back one move here, this rook is eyeing that b2 square for sacrifices. You got to look out for all types of sacks that will open the position up. I mean, just looking at the position, I mean, I can see rook takes b followed up by maybe the knight c3. All different types of sacks are possible. Maybe not now, maybe not the next move, but eventually. So bishop b3 is kind of like a protection or a prophylactic move to kind of blockade his king side there. So with that, Nak plays rook d7 and the other rook to d8. So he's kind of moving on to a different plan, because white's king side here is well blockaded for the moment. White plays h5. King moves out the way because eventually white probably wants to put a rook on that g file there and try to get something going on that side. Queen a5. Now you have knight f4. You have some exchanges of the rooks. Knight takes and pawn takes. Right here, I just want to say Nakamura is not too concerned about his f-pawns being doubled, because now his bishop on g7 is beautiful. I mean, it's just eyeing the king side, the white king side. It's a great piece at this point. It's truly the dragon bishop now. Queen goes to e1, which is hitting the bishop on e6 with the combination of the white bishop on b3. So the bishop goes to d5 to get out of that attack. Now you have bishop b4. This is like a pawn sack here that Duda does not go for. He plays bishop takes d5. But if he would have went for the pawn sack here, then you would have this sneaky move here, queen f6, threatening checkmate on b2, c3 to block, and then black can go ahead and get his material back with bishop takes f3. And now if you look at the position, it's even material, but black's two passed pawns on the F file is a lot better than white's pawns on the king side. Because if white, even though white has a C and B pawn that can pass, it's going to be a lot more difficult for him to push those pawns because his king is hiding behind those pawns. So Nakamura's F pawns that's passed is a lot better. But that was probably the way that Duda should have went in the game. Instead, he played. Excuse me. Instead, he played bishop d5. Bishop takes d5. Queen takes. And now the bishop on b4 is being hit. So he goes back. Black picks off that pawn on f3. And now Duda gets his material back. But now if you look at the position, it's just like all out attack on white's king. You know, you've got the bishop, you got the rook, you've got the queen getting ready to participate, and you forgot the passed pawns on the F file that you got to watch over. So it's definitely a much better position for black here. Black hits the bishop. The bishop's got to move. The bishop goes to a3 here. But if the bishop would have went to f2, it would have been a better move there, because then it would stop black from forming any type of battery, because black's king is weak on the dark squares. It's a lot of holes over there on the king side for white. White's king is weak on the dark squares. So if the bishop would have went to f2, then black's queen, excuse me, could not form the battery with the bishop. It couldn't go here because the queen would take it, and it couldn't go here because obviously the bishop would take it. If we go back, we can see in the game that bishop a3 was played. Now black can form a battery there, which is what happened. Hikaru played queen d4, aiming for this checkmate here. c3. So white offers a pawn here, but if black takes the pawn, then white's going to be able to exchange queens. So black plays queen d3, check, because he does not want to exchange queens, obviously. He's got this big attack going. King goes to b2, and now Hikaru starts to push that pawn. The pawn's only 2 squares away from promotion. Bishop c5 was played in the game, but this is a blunder because the bishop should have been used to protect the king side, and white should have used the rook on h1, which Ali has not moved the whole entire game, not one time. White should have used that rook to go to rook to h2 to try to stop the pawn from going to f2. But instead, he played bishop c5. Rook h2 would have been a much better defensive move. Bishop c5 was played in the game. Hikaru goes ahead and pushes with f2. It's a great tactical move here. The remainder of the game is just all tactics. The bishop takes f2. And now you have this brilliant deflection move. Rook e7. Hits the queen. And I just want to ask you guys watching the video, where does the queen go now? To me, the queen is out of spots. I mean, there's no place for the queen to really go, because you got, remember, the pawn on c3 is under attack. The queen is just waiting to take the pawn on c3 and checkmate white in a few moves. So where does the white queen go to still watch over the c pawn? So if he goes to queen c1, that does not end well for white. You have rook e2. King goes to A3. Bishop F8 check. Only thing that he can do is either block with the bishop, or he could have played B4. They both result in the same thing. Bishop C5 check. And now you have Queen A6. King goes over. Then you have checkmate on A2. So the white queen can't go to C1. So Duda just decided to take the rook. Queen takes rook. But this is not a good idea either. Now you have queen takes C3, check. King goes over to A3. And then do you guys see the move, the finishing move? Queen A5, checkmate. And I just wanted to note out that the rook on H1 never moved the whole entire game. It's not too often that you see games on the GM level where the pieces never develop or never move at all. I mean, understandably, that's where white wanted to attack. So he was thinking that the rook was going to be okay there. It was already in a good position, but it's still kind of odd to see a piece that never moves the whole entire game. So, well, this was a great game by Hikaru. He's 5-0, perfect 5-0. He still has a half-point lead over 2 other players. So look out for round number 6 tomorrow. Aronian drew today, and MVL Maxime Legrave also drew today. So they're probably going to be out of it. So Hikaru is on his way, the quest for 4 straight Gibraltars in a row. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. Until next time.